Welcome FPL managers, I'm your FPL plug and today we're going to be talking how we got on in Game Week 5, wildcards for Game Week 6, my transfer plans and also what the bookies are saying the clean sheet odds are, and it looks really interesting. So first up, let's just talk about Game Week 5. It really didn't go too well, as you can see by the red arrow. We're now sitting at around 826k, which honestly isn't too bad for the start of the season. We can definitely still aim for that top 20k finish. We do need to get back on track though. Some things went really well this week, whereas some things really didn't go too well. So let's talk about it. Henderson, the highlight of the week, 9 points against Manchester United, made a lot of saves and also got that clean sheet. Gabriel once again coming in with a goal against a big team. He really is fixture proof in that Arsenal team. And then moving down, Salah, an okay captain. Obviously Haaland was the better pick this week, but still not too bad. Rodgers with 2 assists and a lot of bonus points is absolutely unbelievable and rewarded all of us managers who were patient on him, knew that he looked good, was getting into some good positions, and obviously he's still very cheap. So a great return for Rodgers there, and happy with him in my team right now. And also Smith Rowe with that goal really is ticking along nicely there, but Pedro Porro and Gvardiol really disappointed in that back line. Pedro Porro is testing my patience, but has really good fixtures going forward, so we'll keep him for now. But the really disappointing player, Morgan Gibbs-White. One, we thought he was on penalties. Turns out Wood is apparently on penalties now, so there's really no point to have Gibbs-White in that 6.5 million midfielder range. And then he goes and gets a second yellow and gets a red card in the game, bringing his total down to -1. So I actually lost points in that game because my player played. So we ended on 62 points, which honestly could have been a lot worse. So let's sort out the team and let's talk about which transfers I've actually already made and who I've brought in. So as you can see on screen here, I have taken out Eze, Isak, Morgan Gibbs-White and Henderson. I've done 4 changes with my 4 free transfers, and I'll talk about why I did that at the beginning of the week in a second. And the reason that I've so confidently made these changes is because the players that I've brought in, I definitely want all 4 of them. And even if I don't want to use the 4 free transfers that I've already banked up, I can just hit that wildcard button at any point before the deadline, wipe out the free transfers that it did use, make these transfers and maybe make a few more, and then carry the 4 transfers over. Now, the way I like to think about FPL is just being as flexible as possible. And the most flexible thing you can do or chip you can have is obviously the wild card, because you can choose which team you want and have that team going forwards. So for me, I feel like we can take advantage now of the free transfers that are allowed to build up and accrue. That's now 5 and used to be 2. And I can use those 4 free transfers that I did have, make these changes and basically have a team that I would have if I had already wildcarded. There's a few slight changes that I would make if I was on a wildcard that we'll talk about very soon. But to be honest, I'm very happy with this team for this week and for the weeks going forwards. Now, as you can see here, the 4 players that I have brought in this week is Brian Mbeumo, Dominic Solanke, Semenyo and Raya as the 4 players that I'm bringing in, obviously for the 4 players that I'm taking out. Now, I think 2 players that are absolutely essential for Game Week 6 and onwards is Mbeumo and David Raya. Raya's looks amazing and Arsenal have looked really good defensively and have some amazing fixtures coming up. And also, even in the bad fixtures, Raya looks like he's making a lot of saves. And if he doesn't get a clean sheet, he'll most likely get save points and possibly even some bonus points. And the reason that I think Mbeumo is essential as well is because of that Wisa injury and Tony no longer even being in the team. Mbeumo is going to be that focal point of the Brentford squad, and we almost 100% know that he's on penalties. Obviously, there's never such thing as 100% nailed on player on penalties other than maybe Mo Salah and Erling Haaland. As we saw with Eze, he's no longer 100% on penalties, and Morgan Gibbs-White. But Mbeumo is basically nailed on penalties, so an essential pick for me with the fixtures that Brentford do have coming up. So next up, we're going to talk about the wildcard team that I would be going for if I was on a wildcard come Game Week 6, and essentially the differences between my transfers and the wildcard that I would play. But first up, let's talk about the clean sheet odds from the bookies presented by Rob T FPL over on X. Do go drop him a follow. He does really great stuff over there. And we're going to be using his resource today in this video. So as you can see here, Arsenal are by far and away the most likely team to keep a clean sheet going into game week 6. And this is why I believe a double Arsenal defence is absolutely essential. I think a triple Arsenal team on a wild card is probably essential. But if you can get double Arsenal defence, I think you're fine. Because look at that, 55% likely to keep a clean sheet. I'm pretty sure that's the highest I've seen all season so far. And then some other notable teams on the clean sheet odds predictor. Liverpool up there again. And Bournemouth actually really high up this week. They've got Southampton, so that's mainly probably the reason that they do have a higher clean sheet odds. So a chance I won't be looking to bring in Bournemouth defenders. But just something to note, if you were going for maybe a 1 week punt, a Bournemouth defender could be a good idea, someone like Kirkaz. And then to back up what we were just saying about Arsenal, Saka is probably nailed on a wild card because look at that, 2.7 projected goals for Arsenal in this game, and then they have Southampton, and then they have Bournemouth. So if you don't have Saka, you might want to rethink your wild card, although if it is for someone like Salah, honestly, I don't hate it. He has still good fixtures. I think people are downplaying his fixtures a little bit. But for that sort of 2 and a bit million that you would say from going from Salah to Saka, I think it's probably worth it and you can make up the rest of the points within your team. So let's list these players that are in my current wildcard team that I think is the best going into game week 6 and then have a little bit of a talk about them, although we have kind of explained them earlier on in the video. So in goal, we've got David Raya, and then we've got Fabianski. Coming in next, we've got Gabriel, Mazraoui, Greaves, Gvardiol, and Pedro Porro. Then we've gone for Luis Diaz to cover off Salah, Rodgers, Semenyo, Mbeumo, Saka, Solanke, Haaland, and also Chris Wood. Now, I think the 3 most essential players in this team, to be honest, other than Haaland, is Raya, Gabriel, kind of count as one. And then Mbeumo and Chris Wood. I think Mbeumo, as I've mentioned before, is really essential. And Chris Wood, now he's on penalties above Morgan Gibbs-White. And Nottingham actually look like quite a well put together team at the moment. I would definitely be picking him as my budget enabling sort of forward over the likes of Calvert-Lewin or João Pedro. And then we've gone for Solanke in the team. I still really like Solanke. Obviously, he hasn't played that many games, but he's amassed something ridiculous like 2.8 or maybe even above 3 XG in the last 3 games. So he's only played 3 games this season, but he's amassed so much XG over that time. I think it's only a matter of time before he starts getting really, really good returns in FPL. So finally, let's talk about my team selection going into game week 6 without my wild card, but with my 4 free transfers being used. So in goal, we've gone for Raya, Gabriel, Gvardiol, Pedro Porro, Salah and Mbeumo, Semedo, Rodgers, Smith Rowe, Haaland and Solanke. And if you compare that to my wildcard team, I personally don't think it's far enough away to sort of need me to use the wildcard and hit that wildcard button. The only real difference is that I don't have any Arsenal attack in the likes of Saka. However, I do still have Salah who plays Wolves, then Crystal Palace, then Chelsea. Honestly, really, really good fixtures for Salah. And I still have Solanke in my team. Yes, I've got Smith Rowe, who's probably not an ideal pick for at least the next 2 game weeks or maybe even 3 game weeks. But he's been really good and he's not that expensive. So I'm happy just sticking him and playing him in these hard fixtures. And then we'll maybe have to look to use my wildcard later on, maybe around game weeks 11 to 15. So to finish off the video, let's talk about when you should be playing your wildcard and if you need to use it this week. And thank you all for watching this far into the video. If you haven't subscribed already and hit that like button, I'd really appreciate it. And if you are facing any dilemmas, let me know down in the comments and I'll reply back to every single one of you. So I think if you have maybe 3 or 4 problem players in your teams, maybe suspended players or injured players like Calafiori, I believe, is injured for Arsenal now. Gibbs-White is suspended. or just any other general players that you aren't liking in your team right now that would need to play in your first team. And if your first team doesn't look like a wildcard first team, or at least my first team, and obviously you can have your differentials here and there, but if the base of it doesn't quite fit the template, then I would advise hitting that wildcard button this week and then just going forward with a more template team. However, you can obviously add your splash of differential to differentiate you from the crowd and hopefully get those extra points over everyone else. But if, like me, you think your team looks good just using free transfers, I wouldn't want to take a hit personally. So if you can use free transfers and have a good team this week and going forwards, I would look to hold off on my wildcard or your wildcard until sort of game weeks 11 to sort of 15, when the fixtures start to swing again for different teams. And obviously I'll be back on this channel explaining to you guys my thoughts on the fixture swings and my wildcard sort of teams. Again, thank you all for watching and good luck for game week 6 in FPL.